Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am thrilled to have you join me on this transformative journey. You see, every day we dive into a powerful conversation about self-discovery, healing, and empowerment. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself is the first step to living a fulfilling life. You can expect insightful discussions, practical tips, and inspiring stories. Plus, we'll occasionally welcome special guests who will share their unique perspectives on self-love and personal growth. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's embark on this journey together. Because it's time to embrace the beautiful person that you are. So let's elevate our lives one episode at a time. Now let's get started. Well, hello, my beautiful people. Welcome to the Season of Self-Love podcast. I am your host, Nyomi Banks. And as always, I am so grateful that you have chosen to spend this time with me today. Well, May is all about nurturing relationships and fostering healthy connections. And today's conversation is one that I know will deeply resonate with many of you. You see, self-love isn't just about affirmation and bubble baths. It's about setting boundaries, recognizing toxicity, and understanding when relationships, even the one that we thought would last forever, are harming us more than healing us. Well, that's why today we are diving deep in narcissistic abuse, how to recognize it, why so many stay, and most importantly, how to break and heal. Joining me is someone whose story is both heartbreaking and empowering, Mia Hanks. She is the author of Bridesmaid, a memoir, where she shares her 29-year experience with a covert narcissist. Her story is one of survival, reclaiming power, and ultimately finding freedom. But before we get into today's conversation, let's take a quick break, all right? It's your girl, you got us, Nyomi Banks, here on the Season of Self-Love podcast, and we'll be right back.
Washington Wellness Institute focuses on healing always. For me, if I look good, then I feel good. If I feel good, then I share the good. If I share the good, then I celebrate the good. If I celebrate the good, then I live the good. So I can be paid to be my greatest. But I have to learn the good to be the good.
So, what does it take to be the greatest? It's as simple as a free 15-minute consultation. Be kind to yourself and heal always.
Hey, it's your girl, you got it, Nyomi Banks, and make sure you tune in every Thursday night to Ask Nyomi Bridging the Gap podcast, where we talk about everything from love, sex, relationship, cultural differences, and so much more by bridging the gap between them all. And we even talk about spiritual uplifting. You need to stop by me and Dr. Mike, as well as the BTG group. We have some amazing guests that come through. You never know. Just make sure you tune in Thursday night, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Go to AskNyomi.com and tell them Nyomi sent you. All right, my beautiful people. Well, welcome back to the Season of Self-Love. And Mia Hanks, welcome to the Season of Self-Love. And thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. All right, so before we get into our topic, we want to just ground ourselves just to prepare for today's show, all right? So if you can all just close your eyes for a moment. I want you to take a deep breath in. Hold it for a moment. Now slowly exhale. Breathe in again, filling your body with clarity. Now exhale, releasing any tension, fear, and doubt. Now imagine a warm light is surrounding you, a protective shield of love and healing. This space is safe. This space is yours. You are not alone. You are worthy of healthy love. And together we are stepping into clarity. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes and get ready for today's conversation. Mia, again, thank you for joining us today. And for anyone that is new here to the Season of Self-Love podcast, it's something that we do every day, Monday through Friday, just to help ground us before we get into our topic. All right, so Mia, again, welcome. Your
you.
relationship with a covert narcissist for 29 years. Take us back to when did you first realize that this something wasn't right?
I think I knew something wasn't right very early on. I got married young. I was 21 years old when I got married. But nobody was talking about narcissism back 30 plus years ago, especially narcissistic abuse. I didn't know what that was. And so I think the red flags that I saw, I kind of swept them under the rug, really, and wrote them off as personality quirks. I noticed really early that my now ex-husband had no empathy. He really just did not care about anything that did not benefit him. And I did see that early. But again, it didn't seem like a reason to leave my marriage, certainly. And I wanted things to work. So things like that, I swept it under the rug. Everything had to be about him. Everything concerned him and how he felt and what he wanted. And it was all about him all the time. So definitely, yeah, I saw that early, but it just did not resonate to me as abuse until much later on.
So when did you realize that it was abuse? Even though you saw all the red flags before, so what made you say this is abuse or this isn't right? Wait, hold on, what's going on?
That's a good question. I'm not sure because it was something that built slowly over time. With narcissistic abuse, it doesn't start horrible. It starts with love bombing and this kind of vicious cycle. And so I don't know really at what point there wasn't a magic moment that I said, I think I'm being abused. It was more just kind of an evolving thing where it just started getting a little worse and a little worse until at some point I just felt like I was too deep into it. I didn't see a path out and I sort of just accepted it. I think I was lying to myself, telling myself this is how everybody lives. This is normal, because I wanted to be normal. I wanted to have a normal marriage, and I didn't. But I wanted it so bad that I just told myself it was normal. It really wasn't until I was experiencing physical symptoms that I knew something had to change and that I had to get out.
And what did those physical things look like? Like, what was what did it look like? Were there physical abuse to you, or was it just more of a emotional, mental that was draining of your body?
Yeah, definitely a physical, definitely a psychological, mental abuse that kept me under so much stress all the time, and in that state of fight or flight. And really, our bodies are just not meant for prolonged stress like that. And eventually, I started experiencing lots of chronic pain that just would not go away. Chronic pain, stomach aches, headaches, a general feeling of being sick all the time, every single day. I can remember waking up the last couple of years of my marriage, every morning waking up and just feeling sick, physically sick, not just mentally. Like I just didn't even want to get out of bed. I didn't want to face the day. It was like, what do I have to deal with today? But over time, it really does start to manifest. That stress does in your body, and it will really break you down. And I really felt that happening to me, to the point that I decided this is no longer sustainable. I feel so ill that something has to change.
Right. Wow. So let me ask you this, and I hope you don't mind me asking. Out of the 29 years, did you bring in children into the relationship? Did you have any kids with him?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have 2 kids, and that sort of adds to the complexity of when you start thinking about leaving. In my mind, society tells us that we stay in a marriage, we work it out, and we don't break up the family. We don't want our children to be children of divorce. We don't want our kids to be in a broken home. And so that I think that sort of, I was telling myself, you have to stay. You've got kids now. You can't break this off. So yeah, and we do. We have 2 children, and interestingly enough, I did not make the break and leave until my kids were both grown, where they were both out of high school. So hindsight is 2020,
Right.
and I thought I was doing the right thing by staying and keeping that family unit together. So
Hmm.
I look back now and wish that I hadn't made that decision. But at the time, I thought I was, doing the right thing.
Well, that's very interesting. This month was more, we're talking about nurturing relationships, but also this month is mental awareness month as well. And knowing that you guys created children together in that relationship, I'm wondering, how did that, your interaction and your relationship with your husband, and even him being narcissistic, how did that for the children? How was that for them? Did it affect them in any kind of way?
Yeah, definitely it did. And again, it was their normal.
Mm,
It's what they knew, and they now can look back and say, they completely see the narcissistic personality disorder. They fully understand it. But growing up in it, yeah, it was all they knew. So I really definitely regret that. And it also, and they struggled in their relationship with their dad pretty much all their years of growing up.
mm,
Um, they're it's a little better now just because they're not all living under the same roof. But yeah, it definitely was difficult. I mean, you have this person in the house who has to be worshipped in effect. Everyone has to walk on eggshells, make sure you don't trigger this person. This person we live to make this person happy. And so definitely it affects everyone in the house. And certainly for myself, it did not allow me to be the kind of mom that I wanted to be.
yeah.
I couldn't be the fun, laid back, as nurturing, I think, as I wanted to be. I was constantly pitted against my kids. He
Mm,
was kind of setting these scenarios up where I had to choose, basically, who's more important, me or them. So yeah, it made me very stressed all the time, very anxious, and I definitely regret not being able to be the type of mom that I really wanted to be.
wow. So let me say this to you, Mia, right now. First of all, again, thank you for sharing your story. And Jen, thank you for being courageous to even write the book. Because you don't know, just through your pain, it has become a purpose,
Yeah,
and just sharing this story. So I hear you say, I regret. And one thing is that we do here on the Season of Self-Love, we don't regret anything. We really don't. Everything that happens for us is for a reason.
very
And
true.
unfortunately, sometimes we feel in that moment like, oh my God, what have we done to our children? The thing is now that you have gotten out of the situation. Now you're going through your healing process. Now you have the tools to be able to help your children to heal as well moving forward. So just a tidbit when you say, I regret, I always say thank you for all of the things that came into my life, both pleasant and unpleasant, because that is who make me who I am today. So everything that you went through in those 29 years of being married to that person, has made who you are today, because trust and believe you're much stronger today than you was when you were 21, when you got married.
Very true. I mean, these experiences, even though they're unpleasant, they do shape us, right? And I know it's made me a lot more aware. I just feel more aware of my surroundings, more aware of personality traits and people around me. It's probably made me a lot more cautious, really,
Mm,
and not as trusting of people, but
right.
not in a bad way. Not in a bad way.
Mhm.
So yeah, and I have a very good relationship with my kids, and
It's
we've
beautiful.
had a lot of great conversation around this topic because they're adults now.
Yeah.
We can talk about these hard things, and so I think I think it has strengthened our relationship. Really, I
Mhm.
feel closer to my kids because of the difficulties that we have endured. So it's not all bad, right? It's there. It does shape us, and it does make us give us some qualities that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. That's beautiful. I'm glad that you all have a connection and a bond with all of this. That's amazing. So many people, we hear the word narcissist, and we think of someone who is overly arrogant and self-absorbed, but covert narcissism is different, right?
Very different. It's considered the most dangerous type of narcissism, because to the outside world, these covert narcissists appear to be anything but a narcissist. So my ex-husband, to everybody that we knew, he was kind, he was so generous and caring and empathetic. Now, he wasn't any of those things, but to the outside world, he wore this mask because it's all about protecting and maintaining their image. He had to be the good guy. He had to be the hero. And sometimes he liked to play the victim. They like sympathy. They like attention. But behind closed doors, he's manipulating. He's degrading. It's just, he was controlling, but he didn't want anyone on the outside to see that side of him. So it creates this very strange dynamic because I'm out there helping to protect his image, making sure he looks good. So I'm basically doing the same thing he's doing, right? I'm telling people, yeah, he's a great guy. He's father of the year. He's husband of the year. I mean, he's great. But I knew better. He was not great. He was abusive. And so then when people are in these situations, when you decide to make that break and leave, it's very difficult to get people to believe you.
Right.
Because they say, first of all, well, how bad could it be? You stayed for 29 years. If it was that bad, you would have left. And second of all, they're saying, no, this is a great guy. I know him. I've known him for years. He's wonderful. So you must be the crazy one. So it's yeah. There's not always a lot of support when you decide to leave these covert narcissists.
Wow. So what are some of the most common tactics that narcissists use to keep their victims trapped?
There are a lot of things they do. In my case, of course, the gaslighting. You hear that term so much now.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when you hear it, it's not even used correctly. But that whole idea of changing the narrative. If I would bring up something that was bothering me, for example, rather than him apologize or him, own up to maybe what he said or did wasn't very nice, he would flip it and say, well, you're too sensitive, and that you shouldn't have been affected by that like you are. He would say, there must be something wrong with you because a normal person wouldn't have reacted or wouldn't have been upset by that. So by the time you get through this conversation where you're trying to work out an issue, the whole thing comes back to you, and it's, then it's my fault, and it's exhausting. So then you start questioning, well, maybe he's right. Maybe I am too sensitive. Maybe I'm overblowing this situation. And you start to question yourself at every turn, and you learn to not trust yourself or your own intuition. So gaslighting is a huge thing. Another thing people don't talk about much is the aspect of financial abuse.
Mm-hmm.
If you're with a narcissist, probably they control 100% of the finances. And so, if you're going to leave, unfortunately, it requires money to be able to leave. And if you can't access finances, you're kind of stuck. So, they have a lot of tactics, but I would say the gaslighting and the financial abuse in my case was what I saw most of.
Wow, that's interesting. I was watching this video of this young lady. She did like a whole series of videos going up. It's actually someone who she had worked for. And they were very manipulative, but they were using money to control the people who worked with him. They were supposed to have been working with him. They had a podcast all together, and they're supposed to have been working together collectively, as it all. He really didn't have the talent, but he had the brains to kind of move everything around, where all of the people that were talented ones, he was more controlling them with the money issue. And that was after the first time that I ever heard about financial abuse. And that was a few months ago. And I was like, wow, this is so interesting. But usually, what she was saying is that usually people that are in that form of being a narcissist of abuse in that matter, that they have either a mental issue that's going on with them, or them themselves have been abused. So let me ask this question, and I hope you don't mind.
Sure.
Have your husband been abused as a younger, or was he diagnosed with anything mentally besides being a narcissist?
So he's never been diagnosed with anything. He is definitely meets all the criteria for narcissistic personality disorder. Of course, he doesn't believe there's anything wrong with him. So, he would never go and be tested because he's perfect. The one common thread that narcissists tend to have in common is that they all have some sort of history of neglect in their childhood. And it sort of makes sense, and my ex-husband definitely neglect in that I would say his emotional needs were not met as a child. And so, yeah, definite neglect. I would absolutely say that for him. And for some reason, kids that experience this, some of these people will go on to sort of build up this, I don't know if you want to call it a wall around them, but they use this narcissism as a means of protection, to protect themselves from, I guess, being hurt. I don't really quite understand it, but that is a common thread is some neglect in childhood. And yeah, I see that for sure.
Wow. Wow. I want to talk to the listeners really fast. For anyone listening right now who feels stuck and who's hearing their own story in Mia's word, what is one thing that you will say to them, Mia? So if anyone is listening and they're hearing their story in yours, what's one thing that you will say to them?
I think the most important message is, for myself, I kept thinking, if I just hang in there a little bit longer, if I can just be a little bit of a better wife, this is going to get better. Eventually, the next stage of life, maybe when we retire, things are gonna calm down. Things are gonna get better. That's just not true when you're dealing with a narcissist. Statistics show narcissism does not get better with age. In fact, it gets worse. So my message would be, if you are in a relationship with a narcissist and you want out, please don't hang in there thinking that something's going to change, because if it changes, it's probably for the worse. And I would encourage anyone, if you feel stuck, just know you're not stuck. It's easy to feel stuck, but there are resources. There is help, and you can definitely find a path out. You don't have to stay. You just do not have to stay.
Thank you. That's some great advice. Thank you for that one. So let's talk about solutions. What are the first steps to breaking free?
The first step that I can say, looking back, that I didn't do a very good job of is you need to set aside some money. I was living in this fantasy world that I thought, well, we've been married for so long and he's going to be fair. And, this is not going to be a high conflict divorce. That was not the case. So yeah, if you're thinking of leaving, you really need to craft a plan. It's not something, you're not leaving a neurotypical person. So this really takes some planning. It takes some time. You need to set aside money. And one tip that I like to give people, and it sounds so ridiculously simple, but it could make a difference, is, when you go to the grocery store and get your groceries, get cash back. It's not easy to trace that. The other thing you can do is occasionally pick up gift cards when you're out shopping. Set aside cash because you're going to need it, and really, think it through. A lot of people will say to go no contact. In my opinion, that's not the safe way to leave a narcissist. I say go low contact and eventually no contact, but to just break everything off all of a sudden, to me, it felt too risky. So I kind of, went about this a little slower, but you really do need to, and have a support system, have at least one or two people that are ready and able to help you, because doing this by yourself is, it's almost impossible. But if you have at least one other person in your corner, it will make all the difference in the world.
Thank you for that. Thank you. That's some great advice. And what about the healing process for you? How has the healing process been for you? How did it begin? How did you begin to reclaim after so many years of who you are and just
I
healing from it all?
Yeah, it takes time. We have to be patient with ourselves.
Mhm.
Everybody's on a different timeline. And I think one of the most beneficial things I did was I sought out therapy. I went for about a year. I did weekly therapy, and it doesn't cure you. It's not a miracle fix, but what it does is it lays the groundwork for you to get on that healing path. So definitely that's something I would recommend to people, is seek out a therapist, specifically a therapist that has some knowledge about narcissistic abuse. That really is helpful. And then I think just surrounding yourself with the right people. Be careful who you're surrounding yourself with, but find your core group, find your people, and those people that can hold you accountable and make sure that you're not slipping into isolation, which is, I think, something when we're healing we might tend to do is isolate ourselves, and that's not healthy. So find that core group and find a good therapist.
Right. So, a few weeks ago, I posed a few questions to some of our listeners about knowing that I was going to have you on. One of the listeners came back, and here's one of the questions, if you don't mind answering.
Yeah.
Um, she said, I left my narcissistic ex, but I still feel guilty. How do I move past that? And what advice do you have?
That was the thing I struggled with the most. That's so interesting to hear that. Um, I did. And it's part of that trauma bonding where even after I left, I felt responsible for him. And I
Mm,
kept saying, and I would tell my therapist, I just feel so bad because I think I ruined his life. And my
mm,
therapist kept saying, but what about what he did to you? Why are you so worried about ruining his life? And the one thing she said that really hit me was she said, he ruined his life. You know, you didn't ruin his life. He ruined his life. He did this. He basically forced you out. He just left me no choice. So the guilt, it's hard, but eventually it eases up. And another thing that I think really helped me heal from the guilt complex was I was talking with my best friend one day, and I said, I feel so bad because, yeah, this was a bad marriage, but every day wasn't bad. We had some good times.
yeah.
And my friend said, why are you trying to make this a math equation? He said, you're trying to take a good day and let it cancel out a bad day. If there's one good day, well, then the bad day goes away. And he's like, that's not the case. And I think that what really spoke to me is he said, there are not enough good days in the world to make up for one day of trauma that he put you through. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, I am trying to make this into a math problem, and it's not a math problem. Trauma is trauma. So eventually the guilt it eases up, but I understand that's really difficult.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. Is there, for you, is there any room for forgiveness for him?
Um, yeah, I mean, for sure. I think we only harm ourselves if
Mm,
we hold on to those grudges. I mean, I'm angry, but at the same time, and it's hard because with a narcissist, it's like when you leave, the drama never ends, right?
mhm.
Because they've been rejected, they've been, discarded, and they don't take that well. They run a smear campaign on you. They spread lies, any number of things. It feels like the drama never ends. And so the forgiveness can be hard because it's like constantly there's like new little things coming up that he's trying to make life difficult for me. But yeah, I mean, we do have to forgive.
Mm,
but we don't have to forget, right? We can
yeah,
forgive, but then we've got to be smart.
yeah.
So yeah, for my own mental health, I have to let it go.
No, that's understandable. I understand that. All right. So we have one last question for you. What are some resources that people who are ready to leave, and any recommendations?
I think the best resource is therapy. I really do. In the beginning, like I say, it lays a groundwork to kind of teach you how to continue your healing journey. Therapy for sure. And then just talking to people. I mean, really talking through things. I think there's some healing in that. There are a lot of great books out there on the subject. I think educate yourself about narcissism and about narcissistic abuse, because then you realize you're not alone. And this is affecting so many people. So definitely good resources out there. There's a lot of information now that we just didn't have even 10 years ago. Right. So I would say just start reading and seeking out information about this, because I think educating ourselves and learning how to avoid this in the future is the best thing we can do.
Okay. So your book, Bridesmaid, a Memoir, can you share a bit with us, just a little bit with us, and why should someone buy your book as well?
So when I was fresh out of this relationship and I was seeking out all this info, everything I found was written by a therapist or psychologist. Mm-hmm. And it was great information. And I learned so much. I read so many books. But it was all very academic. And I really wanted to find an insider point of view. I just wanted to know from someone else's perspective what day-to-day life looked like for them, you know? And I couldn't really find anything like that. And so I kind of had this idea that maybe a memoir would be helpful to other people that are looking for that same thing I was looking for. And so that's sort of how it came to be. And I hope that, I hope it can validate people. I know I really wanted to reach out and find other people in my position. And so I'm hoping that this will help people.
Yeah. I love the whole thing. Is usually if it's something that I can't get out there or can't help me, then I'm going to create something for someone else. Right. And that's on the mirror. But I love that. I love that for you. And I love that for the readers out there who truly can have an insight of what's really going on, whether outside from therapy. So that's good. That's a good one, Mia. That's really good.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was a good one. All right, Mia, I cannot thank you enough for your bravery and your wisdom and your willingness to share your story today. Where can listeners find you in your book?
I have a website, kind of newly launched. It's miajhanks.com. And there's a link on the first page there to go, a link to Amazon to buy my book. It's available everywhere online that books are sold, but the link will take you to Amazon. It's available in paperback and ebook format. And then I'm also on TikTok, and my handle is at NPD&me. That stands for Narcissistic Personality Disorder.
Beautiful, beautiful. Are there any last words that you want to give to the listeners?
Just that, if you're in one of these relationships and you're looking for a way out, just know that you're not stuck. You might feel stuck, but you're never stuck. There's always a way out.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mia. And to my listeners, today's episode, if it resonated with you, if you saw pieces of yourself in this conversation, and know that you are not alone, healing is possible, freedom is possible, and you are so worthy of the love that does not hurt you. So remember to be sure to download our Year of Rebirth workbook for additional self-love and healing exercises. And if this episode has touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear. Let's keep the conversation going. So until next time, stay strong, stay loved, and remember, you are the light that shines within. Have an amazing day. Thank you for joining us on this journey of discovery and empowerment here at the Season of Self-Love podcast. Remember, embracing self-love is a continuous journey, and we're so glad to have you with us. So if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a review. And don't forget to join our community on Facebook at Season of Self-Love. Connect with like-minded individuals who are also on their self-love journey. Now, if you have any questions or topics that you'd like for us to explore, we love to hear from you. Email us at seasonofselflove@gmail.com and let your voice be heard. So until next time, take a moment for yourself today and remember, you are worthy of love, joy, and all the beautiful things that life has to offer.